Okay, listeners and viewers, welcome back to the next episode of the podcast. I'm delighted to have Dani here today. Dani, how are you?
I'm good. It's very cold in Toronto right now, but I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Brilliant. It's very cold here in Northern Ireland as well.
It
But
makes me feel a bit better.
yeah, but definitely not as cold as where it is with you, I would say. Dani, tell our listeners and our viewers about yourself. So who are you? What exactly do you do? And how did you come to be where you are now at this point in life? Big question,
I know, right? Who am I?
I know.
I mean, there's the work side of who I am. So I've always been someone that's very, very curious, and I've always had this um it sounds silly, but this desire to sort of change the world or improve it in some way. So the kind of question of how I got to now actually starts with me taking criminology in university.
Okay.
And I was going to be a lawyer. That was the idea. And I
Hmm.
started learning about prisons, and I did a summer working for a lawyer. And I realized that the law comes in when things have gone wrong. And I started to ask myself the question of how do you get in there earlier, right? How do you start at the beginning? And then that eventually took me to a place where I was really interested in nonprofits and working overseas. My mom grew up as a child laborer in Hong Kong, and one of the ways that she got out of it was that she got educated. And so I had this passion for education
Hmm.
and got really interested in the education space, and the nonprofit space, and then became very, I wouldn't say disillusioned. I think it's a really difficult space to be in, right?
Hmm.
Even though education is truly, I think, where you want to start if you want to make a better world, when you see how international nonprofits operate, sometimes there's a little bit of a cultural assumptions that go into it. Even
Hmm.
if you were at like the kind of places I was at, which were trying to do it really well, which were trying to like really respect local culture, there was something funny about the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, and it just really wasn't for me. But one of the things that I really loved when I was at this nonprofit called World Reader was that it was all with stories, right? And we were doing a lot of local stuff. So we would take local texts, we would pay to get them turned into electronic kind of stuff. Like, oh, sorry, the ebook version. Wow, I can't believe I did that. But like, we would pay to get them turned into ebooks and then distributed within sub-Saharan Africa or whatever local context, right? And so that really got me excited about the power of stories,
Hmm.
to see how much these stories would mean to people. So I remember I was in Uganda and someone picked up an e-reader and he started reading a book and he said, "These are Ugandan names." And I realized that he had only been exposed to books that were donated from a Western context and he started crying.
Oh.
And yeah, and then the kid said, "Oh, this kid looks like me." And I was like, "Oh,
Hmm.
oh, this is so cool." And then I kept having this experience where people were reading on their phones under trees. And like I was really hoping at that point that they were reading World Reader stuff, but I noticed they were reading stuff from Wattpad. And I was like, I became obsessed with Wattpad because no matter where I was in the world, someone was reading some Wattpad story.
Hmm.
And then I met the founders of Wattpad, had so much fun because I'd been on the platform before. I loved writing, got to work with writers. It was so exciting. And then I had this sort of, I'm sorry, this is a really long.
No, it's okay. Keep going. It's great.
Um, and then I had this moment where I had really been following, I think, like my personal passions along the way. And I thought to myself, well, what's next? Like,
Hmm.
what do I do? I'm now in a space that's known as the creator economy space. It's been developed over time. What's the next step there? And I realized that everything was in video, and I'd been dealing with writing,
Hmm.
right, and stories. And so the opportunity came to go to Skillshare came along, and that was cool because you get to work with people like Ali Abdaal, who are like big YouTube stars. You get to see like what that looks like.
Hmm.
And I like to draw, I like to paint, and so it was really fun to work with artists.
Hmm.
But I did notice that there was something quite different about being on a platform like Wattpad, where I was a like power user of it and obsessed with it, and then being on a platform where I just admired the people and also worked. It was different, right? Like I
Hmm.
really enjoyed my time there, but it wasn't the same.
Hmm.
And so I had the question again of what do I do next? And I love working with creators. I love working with artists. And so when the opportunity to work with them more directly, which was like that's what it felt like I was going to get to do with Sendowl. I was going to see people building their little empires, and I was going to play a key role in helping them expand those empires into something that were able to like I don't want to say make money because that's important, but to take that money and do something kind of cool with their lives that they might not be able to do in a traditional kind of like 9 to 5 setup. So that's the kind of like professional journey of like how I got to now.
Nice. I love that. I think I might have pitched this question to you later in our interview. I sent you a few questions in advance, obviously, but I want to ask you what you learned about yourself through that process. So you went through this
Mm.
journey professionally and experienced all this stuff. What did you discover about yourself in terms of what you prioritize and what you find to be really key for you and core for your beliefs as a creator and a business owner?
So I learned about Silicon Valley through this process, right? And so Wattpad was VC funded, and I got ex and I, before this, I'd lived in San Francisco, right? So I'd been exposed, and my husband had started his own business, and so I was very exposed to the world of VCs, and I truly had a little bit of I have complicated feelings towards the VC model and what that drives towards. I find it to be very kind of hype driven, right? Which makes sense. They're chasing money and they're chasing extremely big money and they want everything to turn into big money.
Mm,
Like I get it. But I think that there is this world of thinking within Silicon Valley, which is very compelling because everyone's very smart, and it kind of comes out through the VCs, where people will think that they can do things that aren't within their area of expertise. And now that's often true. You can do things that are outside of your area of expertise, but you have to have incredible respect for them.
mm,
And what I noticed with the thinking with Silicon Valley, like my read on it, was they trivialized art and they trivialized creation.
mm,
And there was always this kind of constant tension point of, okay, like here are these creators, here's what they're doing. How much can we just kind of turn this into like how much can we use data to find things? And
mm,
like, of course you can use data, right? Because I remember I was at Wattpad at the era of big data, right? And everyone was obsessed with it. And at World Reader, my boss at World Reader was this guy, David Risher. He's now the CEO of Lyft. He came from Amazon. Having someone like David, it was so pivotal because he was inspiring and he had a really neat way of using data and thinking about the world, right? It's like you use data, but you match it with taste.
mm,
And so you get to Wattpad and people are like all hyped up about big data. But the obvious thing is you have to kind of be clear about the fact that taste has to come into it.
mm,
And I think the pressure downwards from VCs and whatnot always has this kind of like, oh, are you using the data? Are you using the data? And that's like, they don't actually understand your business
mm,
and they don't actually understand what's going to drive it forward. They don't have the passion, they don't have the love for it. And it is incredibly difficult, especially when you're younger, to have that total conviction that things matter when billions of dollars of money are telling you that that's not the case, right?
mm,
And at Wattpad, I was lucky to have a great leadership team around me that, well, man, like that era of Wattpad cared so much, and so they were willing to like really listen to that. But it didn't mean that you didn't have to keep pushing back against the greater kind of pieces. And so what I found out about myself was that there was this world that talked very different than me. It was Silicon Valley, it was VCs that thought they understood content creation and art, or like didn't care to, and they were always going to be trying to throw some new trend down your throat. And the question was, were you just going to give in, or were you going to try and fight for the thing that you believed in? What I learned about myself is that I like have an irrepressible thing where I will fight for the thing I believe in because I believe in art and I believe in all of those things. It doesn't mean that you don't make compromises along the way, but like I won't do what I do anymore if I feel like that path is too compromised. So.
mm. Fair. Yeah. I think that's really, really important now. And I want to ask you off the back of that. How do you feel like the creator economy is now in terms of its health, in terms of the pressures that are being put on it by AI, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think that we are more driven now just to create content for the sake of creating content? And how do you kind of balance it up then with taste, as you mentioned? So how can creators prioritize taste in this era of the creator economy where it is increasingly data driven and speed driven. Just create content as quick as you possibly can. How do you feel about how things are at the minute?
You're a fantasy guy. Have you listened to Brandon Sanderson's talk that's You Are the Art?
I haven't listened to it, but I'm reading one of his books right now. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love him. And
Mm,
he gave this keynote speech recently that really stuck with me.
mm,
And in it, he basically says, look, he started writing and he wasn't very good at the beginning, but then he kept writing. And through the process of all that grit and that dirt, he gets better and he changes as a person, right?
Mm.
And all of that grit from the beginning and that effort is what enables him to write the way that he does now. And like, as a fan of Brandon Sanderson, I'm very glad he went through that journey. And he has like a unique voice, right? A unique style. And he kind of made this point that like we think that art is about consumption, or like let's put it this way: there's people who think that it is all about consumption, and that the point of creation is to make money, to put something out there in the world, right? And that's not actually the point of art. The point of art is to reflect on who you are as a person, to
Mm.
change, to become better, to think about what the heck we're all doing here, because that's a huge question. And when you reduce it down to how much content are you putting out, how much money are you making, I think we're sort of really in danger of losing the thread, right?
Mm.
Like that is not the point of all of this. And I also don't think that's where good, durable art comes from, right? And I think humans are just, we are drawn to things that are durable and real and that speak to us.
Mm.
And so I think the creator economy is going through this moment where there's, on the one hand, the real art of what creators are doing is getting trivialized.
Mm.
It's like, no, you could just be using an AI to do that, blah, blah, blah. The AIs are so good. Like, why even bother, right? And there's like, I've come across so many channels where it's just obviously Sora videos or what have you, and they're funny. Like, someone has real taste behind that, but they're sloppy, right? It,
Mm.
it doesn't compare to someone who like did something, who might have used an AI to take out some of the effort of some of it, but like really put a real story together.
Mm.
It's not
Yeah.
the same. And so I think that like I feel deeply for creators because there are some people who are telling them they essentially won't matter in a certain amount of time, because something else can create what they do, and the whole point of them creating stuff was just so someone else could consume it,
Mm.
not so they could examine the world, not so people could have real enlightenment, and that's bad. Um, I think that the funny thing about all this content creation, I was reading Jay Clouse, I get his newsletter, and he was talking about how it's this arbitrage moment. If you create lots of content right now, that only gets you ahead of the curve for a little while because everyone else is going to start creating that. And as extra content comes out, curation becomes really important. And now,
Mm.
having worked on lots of content platforms, is really difficult to get past human curation.
Mm.
Even if you have really good algorithms and whatnot, there is an element of taste that just is inescapable. And also, even if the algorithm can do exactly what you want it to do, you know, TikTok is a great example of this. It gives you exactly what you want to keep you on there, not necessarily happy, but your attention. You might not want that. You still want someone to say, "Hey, I thought this was a really good book," because you trust people.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think there's this unhealthiness in the creator economy right now. I think there's a ton of hustle that's happening and a lot of pressure on creators, but I think the people who are going to come out on top of it are the people who paid attention to the craft, who still who ignored some of the hype bubble that's happening, the pressure from all of this money on all of these different areas. Yeah,
Yeah.
art matters.
Yeah, great line of that. The art matters. Yeah, I mean, I went onto Twitter earlier. I don't know why I did that. Stupid thing to do these days, but
Mhm.
literally, I think every third or fourth post was an AI slot video, and people were either saying it was amazing and look what this can do, or they were saying this is a load of crap and look how terrible this this slop is. And either way, it was still just AI slop that was not great. It was interesting.
Mhm.
The fact that they're able to do it is pretty cool, but what it was actually telling in terms of a story was nothing. Like it just didn't make any sense. And that's the reason I left platforms like Twitter for the most part because it's just filled with that now. And I do think there are platforms out there that skew more towards supporting creators and
Mhm.
sort of prioritizing creators' work. Obviously, I'm on Substack, and I think Substack is one of the platforms that
Mhm.
does that really well. Tell me
Yeah, I love
about,
Substack.
yeah, it's awesome. I love it so much. Tell me about, so you mentioned this briefly at the start in passing, but Sendowl is what you're kind of you're
Mhm.
all about now. Tell me what that's about and how you think that might be of benefit to the people who want to create really good stuff and then also maybe generate income from their creation as well.
Okay, so Sendowl is a digital delivery platform. If you have a PDF, if you have a book, and you want to be able to send it to people, and you want to be able to send it in any, like you want to be able to send a link off your LinkedIn, you want to send it off your email. You might not want to trouble yourself with setting up a whole store, or you want to attach it to a store. That's Sendowl. It just makes it extremely easy for you to sell something.
Mm.
You could think about us as a cart that you attach to literally anything, and also the digital fulfillment on the back. Probably need to work on that. But I think if you're a creator out there, you kind of get what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Um, Sendowl falls in the realm of maybe you don't trust platforms anymore because their algorithms are going to change and you want total ownership. You want that email list, you want your customer list, you want to be able to remarket, upsell to that list. That's what Sendowl does.
Hmm.
I think it's part of what drew me to the idea of it. I'd seen platforms, even like really, really well-intentioned platforms that I'd been on. The platform has to think of themselves first, right?
Hmm.
And if they're thinking about themselves first, they're not thinking about the creator first,
Hmm.
unless they're a platform like Substack, right? Because Substack's ethos was kind of like own your own audience too. And so that's Sendowl. If you want to own your audience, I think it's great. The downside of platforms like Sendowl, which is something I think Substack has fixed, is we don't have a great way for people to find an audience.
Hmm.
And so once you have that audience, sure, we can help you monetize it. Right now, we're not at the point where we help you with that marketing and that kind of like audience that you need to get. You still have to find that a different way. But once
Hmm.
you have it, capture it, make money off of it.
Nice. How does it actually work? So let's say someone signed up to Sendowl that had a Substack audience, and maybe they want to sell courses or they want to sell resources or books, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
What does that process then look like? So do they just sign up to it and then they're able to put their products onto like a marketplace kind of thing? Tell me more about it.
Oh, okay. So what happens is that they log in, they create a product. Fun insider fact is we're redoing our product flow, so it's going to be really pretty in a little while.
Nice.
Um, so they upload the product, then they have something called the product sales page. And what happens is that product sales page, it just looks like any checkout that you see anywhere.
Hmm.
And you can link to it. So if you have a newsletter, you'd say, hey, buy this over here. They would click the link, they would see this page, they would just check out immediately. They might not even fully know they are interacting with Sendowl. One of the really funny things about Sendowl was I went into my email inbox after I got hired and I realized I had 6 or 7 emails from creators who used Sendowl. So
Hmm.
it's an utterly invisible process, right? It looks, the branding and everything looks like you to your customers, which I think is great in terms of trust.
Hmm.
And meanwhile, you collect the money on the back end, you have analytics that you'd like to check out later on, that kind of thing.
Nice. And is it the kind of thing that would suit creators at any level? Do you have to have a big audience, or can you just have even a small audience and still use it?
This is one of those interesting kind of conundrums in the creator economy. It's always true that if you have a big audience, it's easier, right?
Hmm.
Um, the creators that I see make the most money are obviously those with the big audience who have a very complicated ecosystem. They have multiple streams of income. I'll see them selling a course. I'll sell them selling, think they have lead magnets. They've got a book. They've got guides. And those people really know how to do it. But now I've seen smaller creators do it too.
Hmm.
People with 1 to 2,000 followers that are just really active, that really like what they do. I've even seen it in this incredible niche world where I hope this creator doesn't mind me mentioning her, but we work with this small business called The Holy Mess. And what it is, it's health and wellness plans, but targeted at people who are Christian
Oh.
and using kind of like Bible phrases and whatnot to help you with the part I think of anything that's hard is what do I return to, right? Like for me, I think about Dune and I think about the litany against fear when I'm scared, right? Like you have to have some sort of higher thing that centers you when you're in difficult moments. And for them, it's Bible phrases and passages.
Hmm.
That's very niche, right? That's not a huge seeming slice of the world.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyway, she makes a pretty good living. And when you think about that world, it's, I think, very, I think almost anyone can make money if they have over a threshold of people that are interested. And they
Hmm.
have an interest in creating a lot of different products for that group that answer really specific needs for them.
Nice. I love that. It's kind of like the 1000 True Fans kind of idea,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like if as long as you have a base that really love you and are super fans of what you do, you can kind of do whatever you like. And it sounds like Sendowl is the kind of platform that helps people just make that happen. And I know that's a major thing for so many writers and creators. They struggle to generate income from
Yeah.
their work, and it's such a major frustration. And I think as creatives, all we want to do is create and then actually get paid so we can pay our bills and keep creating
Yeah.
essentially. That's kind of the goal, isn't it? Um, I want to pivot really quickly, Danny, just back to, so we talked about different adventures you've had over the years, different things you've done in your professional journey. But something that you've mentioned, I think I read this online, is that you spent 7 months motorcycling around South America. If I've got that
Yeah.
wrong, you can correct me, but
No,
if
that's
it's
right.
right, tell me about something really crazy that maybe happened in the course of that journey, and maybe something you learned about yourself again through that process as well.
Oh goodness, a lot of crazy things happened. Um, so the kind of backstory to how that ended up happening was my boyfriend at the time proposed to me, and then he jumped on a motorcycle and drove from Toronto to Colombia.
Oh,
And I was like, I'm gonna quit my job. And like I'm not the kind of lady who follows a man, but that was very exciting.
mm.
And so I met him in Colombia after he had already driven from Toronto. He left in a snowstorm in January. He's already been on the road for months. I meet him in Cartagena after being in Colombia on my own for a bit, and thus begins one of the great adventures, right? Throughout the course of that, I think that the adventure story we always tell everyone just to center like how crazy this got was we were going through Peru to Bolivia, and they had closed the border, and it was a Canadian mining company, so I'm Canadian. I think I can't remember the name of the company, but they had the locals were protesting against it, and they closed the border as a protest. Now we were on this BMW that goes off-road, so we thought, whatever, they closed the border, we can get around. We did not realize the extent of what we were getting into. We had been told to be a few hours to cross the border. It ended up being many, many hours. We didn't have enough water. We didn't have enough food. It was very high altitude and very sunny. When we crossed the border that day, they told us that we were the only people who made it across. I heard, and I never verified this, but people told me that people died on that crossing, and I am not surprised because the first person that came across us ran at us with a scythe.
What?
Um, yeah, it was weird. We were like, we'd been stopped and we were talking to these people and we just see this guy running at us with a scythe. At this point in time, we had gotten a little rough around the edges. We'd had people pull machine guns on us and kind of laughed our way out of the situation. I know that sounds insane, but we had gone through some very difficult terrain. We thought we could get out of anything. We didn't take it seriously that this guy had run at us with a weapon. And so it just keeps getting worse until the point where we had to go through mud and ditches. They had tripwire set up at not tripwire, but the kind of wire that cuts your head off if you were to go out at full speed on a motorcycle, and it was almost invisible. They had pits where it was designed so the front end of your motorcycle would go in and would throw you into a pit of glass. People were throwing actual boulders at us. Like we actually ended up going through this pass, and I remember seeing just rocks explode ahead. I looked up and there's people pushing boulders, and I was like, do they actually want to kill us? And so, at
This is
this point in
insane.
my life, before this, I'd played a lot of video games, but I'd never been in one. And then I suddenly had this horrifying realization that I was playing one.
Yes.
And I remember the thing that I learned about my now husband, because this is the kind of adventure where you get through it, you look at each other and you're like, we will get married. So it was, we both just went, once we realized the gravity of what was going on, we went completely quiet and there was no talking because you had to pay such close attention to what was going on. And we would just say things like looks like that rock exploded, there's glass up ahead, and I would kind of get off and because like what we realized early on was that I wasn't a competent enough motorcycle rider to have my own bike. So we left that behind in Colombia. And I was on
Hmm.
the back of the bike and I would get off and I would brush the glass out of the way as these like rocks were exploding. And we would just kind of keep going and going and going. Um by the time we got to the other side, I remember getting to the counter. Oh, and the other thing I should say is that we only didn't, I think, die because someone took pity on us. And he led us through the traps at the end and then waved us goodbye at the border. We never found his name. We didn't say anything other than he was like, "Do you need help?" And we're like, "Please." And then we waved goodbye at the end, and that was it. We were together for 3 hours, I think, at that point, and nothing more than that. So we get to the border, and I remember putting up my motorcycle helmet. My entire face was covered in mud for a series of reasons. I did not look like my passport. The guy didn't even look at it. He's just kind of like, "Oh, look at you guys." We get to this
Look
hostel
at
on
you
the other
guys.
side, and I was so dehydrated I wouldn't stop drinking orange juice. And Steve looked at me, he's like, please stop doing that. And I puked everywhere because like the stress and the dehydration
Oh,
and the acidic orange juice. Anyways, that was a really that whole trip. I remember by the end of it, getting to Brazil and as a Canadian coming from this really cushy existence where people aren't trying to pickpocket you or kill you or pull weapons on you, by the end of it, people were doing stuff like that, and there was actually zero. There was no reaction from either of us. We just be like, how do we get out of this? There was at one point where people were trying to bribe us or get us to bribe them to pass something, and they put us in separate kind of cells. They like held on to us, and like there was no emotional reaction to this. It was just like, how long do we have to wait them out? This will be fun. And something very weird happens to you when you go into that state. Like the world starts to look like a very different place. And so you go back to Canada and everyone's wandering around and they just seem like kind of idiots, right? Like I think I'm like that again now. And I remember thinking it was far too boring. We ended up going to Spain and I got a job with World Reader. And part of the reason I got the job with World Reader was they said things like, do you want to go on a flight to Ghana or Kenya by yourself? Come back in a few weeks. And they're like, oh, by the way, there's been bombs going off in Nairobi. Are you okay with that? And I'd be like, yeah, of course. I don't really see what the problem is. And so it's like, it was really, it changed me at like a cellular level. And I've forgotten what it's like to walk around like that. But now I know it's possible. The
Wow.
thing that's influenced me that's stuck with me ever since then is like there's two things, and one of them is applicable to this AI age. A lot of people in the AI age, I think it's you're like, oh, I just want to do it faster. I want to do it faster. It's easier. It's easier. It's easier. I could have taken an airplane, right? And I wouldn't have gone through that situation at the border.
Mm,
I would never have learned anything about what I'm able to put up with or get through if I
mm,
had done that, right? I think I had this idea that I was the kind of person who would crumble under that kind of pressure, and it turned out no, I was fine, right? Um, and sometimes doing things the hard way is how you figure out who you are,
mm,
right? And that's how you build up the scaffolding to all of that. So sometimes the easy way isn't the right way for you as a person.
mm,
The other thing that really stuck with me was because the motorcycle trip was on the back of a trip to Asia. It was basically I spent a lot of time in Sub-Saharan Africa after that and India. I left with this profound feeling from all of that that Americans kind of center themselves in this narrative, right? They build these companies, they can push products anywhere in the world and people will just like them. And that's not true, actually. There's a lot of cultural nuance that I think is very easy to forget. And so the other really compelling thing when you're in the tech world is the tech world at the time, especially, was a very San Francisco perspective. And I think having all of that backdrop of just getting to like the nitty-gritty of how different it is from place to place
mm,
made me very confident when people would say stuff like, well, this will just work over here. And I would be like, it won't. Like
mhm,
it will to a certain extent, and then you're going to hit a ceiling because what you don't realize is that the world of luxury and wealth, that is the same everywhere in the world. Now go a level deeper and things are quite different. And
mm.
so think about this a little bit more. And anyways, very long answer to your question, but I think that was a really pivotal moment for me.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I honestly expect you to say something like, yeah, we got lost somewhere or there was really bad weather, or not like you're in the middle of a video game where people are like throwing boulders at you and glass and stuff. It's incredible. I love that.
It it was like are you a video game player at
Yeah,
all?
yeah.
Yeah, just the shock that you're in one is and you have no like extra lives. It's
Yeah,
awful.
yeah, you can't respawn.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I love that. No, it's a story. And like, have you ever written that down and turned it into anything, that story about what you guys did? Or can you see that becoming something in future? Because that's not a
Mhm.
usual kind of story to share. Like it's really, really different and interesting, you know?
I thought about it a lot at the time, right? Especially because I was writing so much.
Mm,
But I found there were two things that kind of happened. Often I would tell people that story over dinner and they would glaze over and not fully understand what had happened. And there was
mm,
other stuff along that trip that gets that similar response. And I worry that it wasn't as interesting as I thought it was. Over time, I realized, yeah, it was quite interesting.
it is, yeah.
Yeah. The other part about it was, and now it's been so long, right? It's hard to get all the details right and whatnot.
Mm, yeah.
But yeah, maybe someday, maybe someday.
Maybe someday. And you have written fantasy, am I right in saying that? Or you dabble in it,
Yes.
yeah? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So for me, it's kind of like a combination of fantasy and also horror fantasy. I love taking scary shit and then
I really
playing
resonate with
around
that.
with
I
it.
like that.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Oh, we gotta talk about that. And so I think one of the I'm trying to think of one of the ones that I really liked recently. I haven't published this anywhere, not on Wattpad or whatever, but had two kids. And there's so many scary things about children, right? You go through for me, it was going from this state of being relatively fearless about everything to suddenly being afraid of everything. Like, oh my goodness, my kid is going to kill themselves because they choked on a fork, which it's so stupid. This like everyday item could be suddenly so dangerous.
Mm.
And so to cope with it, I started writing these horror stories. Like, what if you went to a play date, but the other kid there was actually a vampire? Like,
Oh,
suddenly it's like you're worried about your kid having weird friends. Like, what if one of them is actually quite deadly? And
I read
so
that story.
yeah, it was good fun. Um, Another one was I noticed a lot of women were having issues postpartum with losing weight and whatnot. And the length that people would go to, including myself for a brief moment in time before I got my head back on, were so extreme that I wrote this story about someone who realizes that she is a monster who eats people, but she starts consuming herself first in an effort to kind of lose weight, but that turns into this thing where she starts to eat people. And it's
Oh.
grotesque, right? But it was so fun to write it. And I remember once I'd written that, that was the moment I was like, oh, okay, I'm,
Mm.
I'm done with this particular thing. And so fantasy's always been that. It's always been also about I remember reading Lord of the Rings and I was just like, I love this book. It's so
Mm.
good. And then realizing it was so British, right? Like it had such a center on that. And
Mm.
I'm half Chinese and half Portuguese. And I wanted to see more Asian stuff happen, which is like definitely happening, where there's some great writers now who are doing this, but I wanted to see more Asian stuff in it. I wanted to see mixed characters, and I hate the fantasy trope where there's a half elf person, but oh, it's so terrible that they're a halfie. I'm like, I'm a halfie, stop it. Like it's a superpower. It's not
Mm.
this terrible thing that should be this center point of this fantasy.
Mm.
All right, now you have to tell me a bit about your fantasy. What are you into?
Yeah, so in terms of writing it, I've written a couple of young adult fantasy novels.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're basically, if you think of like Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings kind of stuff. I mean, to talk about you mentioned about like things are very British, with Lord of the Rings stuff like that. This is kind of a British kids
Wait,
in
okay,
the
well, you're
story.
in Ireland, so
Yeah,
actually, like, it makes sense,
it
right?
makes sense for me, I guess. But yeah, so they're like three kids who get lost in the mountains during a school trip and then end up in a fantasy world and all that kind of stuff. It's not really selling it very well, but I loved writing it. Like I wrote it during the pandemic whenever I had this real frustration with uh really poor villains in books and movies where it always felt the villain was a real letdown, and I wanted to write a really good villain, and in order to do that, I need a good protagonist to kind of build towards that point. So I
Ooh.
started this series, and I wanted to write something that I would have liked to have read whenever I was younger as well. So I just basically packed everything in there. There's loads of Irish mythology kind of inspired stuff. So a lot of the landscapes are similar to where I'm from. A lot of the actual monsters and creatures and stuff in the book are directly inspired by mythology from this island I live on. And that was really fun to try and work that in there and try and create my own sort of fantasy mythology and system around it all as well. Um,
Mm.
but now I'm reading Brandon's first book. I think it's The Way of Kings. Is that what it's called?
Oh, yo, that's a good one to start with.
Yeah,
Some
and
of
it's
his earlier stuff is a little rough around the edges, but that one is good.
yeah, it's and I'm only like part of the way through it, but I'm like, oh my word, like I could have done so much more with the magic and the fantasy and stuff because every single page of his book is just like overflowing with imagination, if that's the best way to describe it. It's just he just takes really simple things about the world, like he's describing wagons going across this like tundra and the grass is like pulling into the ground as they're coming closer because it doesn't want to be seen and it comes up again whenever they're gone. And I was like, I just wish I thought of things like that whenever I was writing my books. And it actually, as much as it sort of um discourages me because someone they're such a good writer, it also encourages me to want to like do a lot more with my fantasy and future. So
Mm.
this sort of like 6 or 7 book arc that I have in mind for this series that I'm doing, I suddenly see it being so much bigger than that and having like offshoots and
Mm.
novellas and short stories around it too to kind of flesh it out. So I'm excited to spend more time finishing that series, and hopefully one day it'll be done and I can read it to my future kids someday as well. But yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, you're gonna one of the things that I'd say is like go back to some of his earlier books because um when I read Way of Kings, I had this sudden realization that I hadn't set up magic systems properly
mm,
because of how he sets them up. and just the craziness of that book and the beauty of it. And if you go back to the earlier stuff, you could see how he builds it there, and it was actually so inspiring.
Mm,
Because instead of making me feel like I will never write like that, it made me feel, and it's just what you were thinking. It was so instructive, like probably the most pivotal.
mm,
It really changed how I thought about writing. I wish I would do more of that these days.
yeah. Do you plan, and maybe you've already published things, but do you plan to publish books someday in future in terms of your fantasy, or what do you think about that?
Hmm. I- Maybe one day. I think for now it occupies a space for me where it feels so utterly personal. Like for a while, I felt like what I want to do was get these stories out there, and now it feels like I write this stuff for me and maybe a few friends. And what I'm working on right now is I'm trying to understand what a better governance system would be. Like I'm
Mm,
trying to understand utopia. Like, is it possible? And so I'm just building a world so I can have all these characters act out different archetypes. And for me, it's this intellectual sort of exercise, I think that's for me, right? But
mm,
I think I love writers and people who have the courage to really put it out there. Because I think there's a little bit of like cowardice that's
mm,
wrapped into how I approach writing right now.
mm. I think that's similar though for a lot of writers. I think there's so much holds us back from just either just starting or just actually getting stuff finished or getting things out there in the world. What have you seen, Danny, from your perspective as part of all these different companies that you feel maybe does hold writers back, or what could they do differently to kind of take that step where they start to really build a business around their writing and start to make money from it and start to see their fantasy characters come to life, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, the comment that I've seen, and I really should have learned from this, is they just get going,
Mm,
right? They're okay with stuff being kind of crappy, and putting it out there.
mm,
Wattpad was so interesting because on the back end of Wattpad, I was able to see incredible amounts of data about what people were actually reading.
mm,
And you could see these arcs with writers. So a writer would start writing werewolf fiction was a thing at the time. And when we did research into why they were writing so much werewolf fiction, it was because the tropes were really solid. And so if
mm,
you're a beginner writer, you can play around with these tropes, you do one thing different, whatever. And my initial thing that would happen when I first got to Wattpad was, oh, this isn't very good writing. Why are so many people reading it?
mm,
And that was silly because once I got into it, I realized why they were reading. People will forgive bad writing. They will not forgive bad plot,
mm,
and they want good dialogue. And so I realized that there's a lot of courage in this. They just started writing, they got the fundamentals right, and then you would see several years later, they would write something that was just astounding.
mm,
And I was like, oh, the courage to just put something out there that isn't good. I see it at Skillshare, I saw it at Skillshare too. You just have to get started. And I see it at Sendowl, like someone will put on something, they'll spend too long creating a PDF. And that is so much worse than just putting something out there. You get a lot of shitty reviews or trolls. And if you listen carefully to what they're saying, you do something better. And
mm.
so like that's the thread, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so hard as a creator because I think the number one fear that people have is that they're going to get that negative feedback, and then how do they deal with that negative feedback? And
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you just have to throw yourself into it and let it happen to
Mhm.
you, and then learn from it.
Yeah.
Um, who would you say? So again, with my Substack audience, it's a kind of a mix of writers of like nonfiction and fiction and creators
Mhm.
of different products. Is there like an ideal person who Sendowl is suited for, or is it just kind of something that's for everybody? Is there like an ideal avatar out there for it?
Hmm. I'd say Sendowl works for everybody. I'd say, and people of all sizes should do it. I'd say the ideal person who's going to get the most use out of it,
Mm,
they already have digital products.
mm,
Um, they already have something of an audience. What they want to do is have more products. So Sendowl has unlimited products and unlimited storage, right? So you want something that you can kind of grow into and you don't want to have to think about it over the next little while. Um,
mm,
I would say they are also somebody who is into, this is getting awfully specific, but I've seen that's important, they're someone that's into bundling and upsells, but not in a really shouty kind of way, which
Mm,
probably I don't think writers are like this anyways, but there's different platforms where you have really aggressive upsells and really aggressive all of this kind of stuff. That's not Sendowl. Sendowl is we would like to sell you something clean and professional. If you want more, here's a way, but I'm not going to keep kind of like pushing it at you.
mm.
So,
Okay. And
mm.
I'm just interested in this now, talking about it. Um, what is the payment system like for Sendoll? So do you pay like a monthly fee to be part of it, or what way does it work?
Yeah, it's a monthly fee. So you have a monthly fee. It starts at 39 US is the lowest tier, and then it goes up kind of to quite a lot. You could pay up to $1,000 a month. It's all based on volume though. So all the features are free to anybody. So what you just if you're not making that much money or not selling that much, you will be at the lowest tier. And as you start to expand and grow, the rate will go up with you. And so
Mm,
it has been pointed out to me that this is a little bit like a percent of rev share, and that's not mistaken. It's just quite a bit less than say if you go on a Gumroad or whatever and it's 10%. This
mm.
is sub like in some cases 1% of someone's revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of sounds like the like a convert kit sort of system where just everything's there, but then yeah, as your audience gets bigger, then you pay more for it. It's fair.
Mhm.
Okay, that's awesome. And I feel like I could talk to you about fantasy and horror stuff all day long. But I'm gonna just ask
Same.
you one question about that so we don't go on too long about it. Um, have you got a favorite fantasy novel or series that you absolutely love?
Oh, oof. Oh man, how could you ask that?
Right at the end as well.
Um, the Brandon Sanderson, what is that part? Why am I forgetting this? The series that The Way of Kings is part of. It's like the
Oh,
Something Light Archives.
the
Stormlight
Storm
Archives.
Kingdom, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So good. I'm really into what is it? The Poppy Wars. There's the Poppy trilogy, the Poppy Wars trilogy.
Okay.
It is dark like nobody's business, and so it is a fantastical version of a period in China's history that was really difficult, right? It covers the Cultural Revolution, but what if people had magic powers?
Oh wow.
And
Nice.
it takes subject matter that is hard to engage with, and I think makes it very engaging and interesting, but there are parts of the book that are so close to reality and the darkest parts of reality that it
Mm,
I give the books to people and I say, you want to read this, it's very important. When you get to this part in the book, just take a breath.
mm.
And it's not like the way when I'm like, hey, read Brandon Sanderson, it's going to be the most engaging thing you've ever read.
Yeah, love
That
it.
one's very, very good, but just it takes a little bit of more care, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think I only started dabbling in Brandon Sanderson now, but I can tell after like just a few chapters this is going to be the kind of series I'm going to love. So, and his books
Yeah.
are massive as well. So, and I'm a slow reader, so it takes me a long time to get through a book. And some people can just fly through them. My wife reads books so quickly; she just devours them, whereas I take a really long time to get through them. I can write books faster than I read them. So, I'm looking forward to digging into that over time.
Well, okay, I can't wait to see if this holds true because he's known for something called the Avalanche, which
Mhm.
is at the end of his books. Part of the reason I am on pause of Brandon Sanderson is I'd stay up all night reading them because I couldn't stop. And I like as a mom with two kids, I need to be able to go to sleep. But anyways, if you get to that point, you might find yourself like reading just whenever you can.
Oh, really? Is that kind of effect, does it? You just have to get to the
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is he well what I see Stephen King behind you. I have to ask you, what's your series right now?
Yeah, well, Stephen King is my favorite author, so like anything he writes, I just absolutely love. I managed to get the whole of the Dark Tower series for like 20
Oh yeah.
pounds the other day, which is pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to getting into that as well. But yeah, I just love all of his stuff. Like I'm working my way through all of his novels, and there's a few that are absolute standouts. Like I think Pet Cemetery for me is one of the most powerful horror novels I've ever read. It just really hit me for some reason, not even in like a fearful sense, but like in like it just hit me in the emotions, if you know what I mean. Like it made me very, very sad at times, obviously because of the subject matter in it. But yeah, I just love his stuff so much. And I should read more than I do as an author. I don't even read enough at the minute, and this is why when I saw Brandon Sanderson's book on the shelf, I was like, I need to read that. It's huge. It's going to take me a long time to get through it, but I just wanted to like dive into a really good fantasy series and just spend some time in it. So I'm excited to dig into that.
All right, sorry, I have to ask you.
So
I find that sometimes I don't think good writers read as much as they should always. And I think
mm,
that's to give space for their own fantasy worlds and creation, you know?
yeah, yeah, it could be the case. Yeah. I definitely get I always get inspired by other people's stuff, and I think I have a bad habit of getting inspired by it, but and then sort of falling into their mythology a little bit and sort of struggling to kind of stay in my own sometimes because theirs is just so engaging, like his is.
Mhm.
Even the same with like games sometimes as well. You play games, fantasy games or um massive multiplayer games, and you sort of inadvertently get
Yeah.
sucked into that a little bit too, and it's hard to break out of it. But yeah. What's your favorite game, by the way? Have you got a favorite video game?
Okay, so all my stuff is a little dated because I was playing a lot. Terrible to admit this, but I was the kind of person who would have a sick day from work so I could just order pizza and play video games all day.
Don't
And
appreciate that. I love that.
and I think I like I anyway, so it's a little dated, but Shadow of the Colossus
Mm.
was one of the games that I loved and still think about. Mass Effect, that whole series also had a really big impact. But Shadow of the Colossus I liked because of the journey that you go on. Have you played it?
I haven't
Yeah.
played it. I haven't played it, but I really want to.
Yeah, the I don't well, I'm gonna do the spoiler for it, but you play it and you're the hero, but as you take out these big colossuses, you feel sad about it. The game deliberately makes you feel terrible about it. You're like, "Yeah, I did it. Well, something's wrong." And it's at the end that you sort of realize that maybe potentially you're the villain, or like it
Mm.
takes your engagement with the game and does something very interesting. And I think that's why I like Mass Effect too, because there were whole sequences where I remember if you went all violent and crazy, there was an easier way if you just talked to people. And I thought, how fascinating.
Mm.
Like these guys are smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, my wife and I love the Last of Us games as well because
Oh,
the
yeah,
the
forget
depth, the
it.
depth of storytelling and just
Yeah.
the emotional weight behind everything is so powerful, and it's really hard to top those games. I find
Mhm.
I found very few games since then that I've been as into and wanted to play again and again and again. Just so good.
It's
Yeah.
if you feel like Last of Us, you like that kind of that sequence where you have to kill the people in the hospital.
Yes.
It's you're just like, why would you do that to
Yeah.
us?
It's so bad. So
Yeah.
difficult. But yeah, I've played it so many times and I could just continue playing it forever. It's such a good game. And I recently played Silent Hill 2 for the first time. Never played it before.
Mm.
The remake of it, and absolutely terrifying, but like such a good game. And again, just the storytelling in it and how they do it is incredible. And there's a new one coming
Wow.
out this year apparently as well, so might have to try that.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh
Um,
no, I have to stay away.
I know. Yeah, it's so easy to get sucked in. Danny, thanks so much for this conversation. It's really cool to chat to you about this. Have you got anywhere you want to send people after this conversation? So do you want them to go and check out Sendowl? And where can they go to do that? Is there a particular place you want to send them to?
I think the easiest thing is to Google Sendowl, just
Okay.
Sendowl, get to
Yeah.
the homepage. Check it out, see if it's right for you. And if you were on this podcast and you want maybe a secret discount,
Mhm.
I'm actually always open to people emailing me. So it's DANI@sendowl.com.
Nice.
Maybe I'll hook you up.
Brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much. Danny, just as we finish, can you leave our readers with just one or two lines, one or two sentences, that bit of like a golden nugget of advice for anyone who wants to write for a living? Is there anything you can just leave them with, like a final thought? If they forgot everything else we talked about, which hopefully they won't, but if they did, what would you want to leave them with today?
It's so silly, the Nike phrase, just do it. But I'd say just do it and also be a bit sophisticated about it. Build up that ecosystem.
Mm,
If you're a fantasy writer, I think fantasy lends itself to IP very well. Think about the merch that you could create. Think
mm,
about the cool kind of hats. I have a lot of Brandon Sanderson gear because I like looking like a fan, and I think fantasy and sci-fi people are of that mind, right? So physical merch, great, is a great thing to get into. Have short stories, have a whole world in mind. Don't just invest all in on the story itself, uh, because it will be very hard to make money if you do that. But if you think a little bit more holistically, I think that's where like the money lies.
Brilliant. Great advice. Danny, thank you so much. Really cool to chat to you today. I really enjoyed this. Again, I could talk about fantasy and sci-fi and horror and games all day long. So I think we better stop it there before we tumble into it again. But yeah, thank you so much. And maybe catch
Okay,
you
I
again
feel
real
like you and
soon.
I need a happy hour. Thank you so much for having me. This has been the highlight of my week, maybe my
Brilliant.
month.
Oh,
Okay,
so
thank
kind.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Danny. I'll see you soon.
All right, take care. Bye.